Now, in order to just kind of back up so that we can go forward, I do want to be certain that we understand kind of the gravity of what's taking place here. Hitler's already started his expansion. He takes Austria, he takes Czechoslovakia, takes his half of Poland, he takes Norway, he takes France. The entire continent is basically under his control. There's only one nation left that can stand up to him. It's the Brits. But even they're not really a great option. Even even Churchill says, we're not necessarily prepared for a full-scale war here. The Germans have a big lead. There's only going to be really one thing that can stand up to Hitler. Yes? Okay. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. We did get to this point yesterday, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, here's the deal. I want to take a quick look at the map so we can look at how much trouble the Brits are in. Now, they do have the biggest moat in Europe to protect them. They have the English Channel. Now, I do just want to ask real fast, why is that a problem for the formula of the Blitz? How does it change things? Yes, Ken?
Tanks can go on.
You can't get the tanks there. You got to figure out how to eventually get the tanks there. So if you're going to do it, you need aerial superiority. You have to control the skies above the English Channel. We were talking about it yesterday because we learned this in World War II. When you control the skies, you control the battlefield. Hitler believes correctly, we need to own the skies so that we can eventually bring the tanks across the English Channel. He's not wrong, he's right. But there is a big mistake that's made. Do you remember? What's the big mistake that one of these Luftwaffe pilots makes?
Oh, yeah.
Remember what it was? Did you guys remember?
They bombed London.
Accidentally bombed London.
Because he had too much of a penalty.
He didn't have the weight to get, or excuse me, he didn't have the gas to get back, so he's got to drop the weight. Now he kills civilians, and Churchill pops a bottle of champagne. Why is he celebrating when civilians are dead? Yes, ma'am.
Does that mean that they're like allied powers, or like the allied countries have to now enter the war because people have been hurt?
They're it. Brits are the only one left.
I got it.
That's it. They're the only ones. How's that hand up?
Yeah, if they're like not targeting factories.
If they're content on hitting civilians, they're not hitting the factories.
They can produce.
They can keep producing. As long as Hitler wants to hit civilians, we can stay in the fight. Now, there is going to be a new technology that the Brits are going to rely on. Now, some of you fell into this yesterday when you picked radar as one of your top choices. Those of you that chose the radar yesterday learned real fast, radar becomes a new technology that's going to quite literally save Great Britain and probably save the world. These radar towers that they have all over Great Britain are this new technology. It's unproven, it's not perfect by any means, but it is an early warning system. Now, I want to just give you a real brief rundown on how radar works. Basically what it is you have a radio tower that sends out radio waves. When it hits an object, it bounces back to the radio tower, and it can give you an idea about where this thing is, how fast it's going, and even like its size. But it does have plenty of problems. Sometimes these radio waves hit a flock of geese, come back, and you interpret it and say, oh my gosh, there's 100 airplanes in the air. No, there's not. It's just geese migrating. So it's far from perfect at this time. But Winston Churchill sees some potential here. He sees the early warning system. Now, Hitler has been offered this radar system before, and he says it's unreliable. It doesn't work. It's all just a fairy tale. He thinks that it's a huge failure. Churchill sees the potential. These radio towers are set up all over Great Britain, and thank goodness they are, because I want to take a look at the map here. Germany controls France. They control the Low Countries. They control Norway. Where can they launch an attack from?
Anywhere.
Anywhere. The Brits are almost entirely surrounded. So they know that these Luftwaffe pilots can come from anywhere. If they don't know where they're coming from, they've got big problems. This radar takes that advantage away. This radar allows the RAF to go up and intercept the Luftwaffe wherever they're coming from. Now, there's something here that almost is, it's kind of strange, I guess. Because when Hitler's Luftwaffe is consistently getting intercepted, he always says, how is this possible? How are they just getting so lucky? How is the RAF always in the right spot no matter where we launch these attacks from? They must be the luckiest people in the world. This is what I don't quite understand. This is where I think that he should have reevaluated his thoughts on the radar, but he never does. He never changes what he originally thought. He just thinks the Brits are getting lucky. For weeks it drags out. For months it drags out. They can't knock the Brits out. Yeah, they're inflicting casualties. Yeah, it's nasty because civilians are being targeted, but they can't beat the Brits. Now I want to go back. You remember, how long did it take for Poland to fall? 4 weeks. What about the French, the biggest army in the world?
6 weeks.
6 weeks. Now you got the Brits, and it's dragging out for months. Is this what the Blitz is supposed to do?
No.
Take them down.
Based on speed, it's based on agility. Finish them fast, and it's dragging out. After months of trying to knock out the Brits, Hitler just gets frustrated. He says, this isn't working. It's not going the way that it should. It's not going the way that's been proven to work. Somehow the Brits are just getting lucky over and over and over again. He's just so mad and so frustrated. He says, you know what? I don't even need to knock out the Brits. They're not part of the bigger plan. The bigger plan is Russia.
He's gonna he's gonna betray him.
I want my prize. Hitler writes it out in Mein Kampf. He says he wants the western plains of Russia. This is the big goal right here. Are the Brits part of that goal? No, so he says, I don't even care. I will worry about them later. What a massive mistake. He calls off the invasion of Great Britain. He leaves the Brits at his back, and he turns to go get what he really wants. Now let's talk about a handful of things here. First off, what's Hitler's relationship with Stalin at this point?
Very good.
They're allies. I promise I won't invade you if you don't invade me. If a fascist dictator gives you a promise, don't believe it. He's gonna turn on it. Now let's kind of make the jump here. He turns on Stalin. He leaves the Brits at his back. What has Hitler just done for himself?
Create more issues.
He's created more issues.
Two-front war.
He's gonna make a two-front war for himself. This is a monumental, horrific mistake that he makes. Now, I was hoping I could get to this point yesterday. I knew I'd be tight on time because now we gotta kind of shift. We gotta look at what the Americans are doing during all this. Even during the Battle of Britain, we're gonna say, look, this is a European problem. This is your issue.
Get your flying tank.
That's being lifted, but yeah. The U.S. is still neutral at this point. We're isolationists. We say, this is your problem, not ours. We don't want to get involved in European affairs. We've done that before, and we've learned the lessons. We're isolationists. But I do want to talk about kind of the on theory versus practice. If you see the Nazis marching through Europe, conquering Eastern Europe, conquering Norway, taking France, and moving on Great Britain, should we be nervous?
A little bit.
Is Hitler going to just stop at Europe? Is he going to say, I have all of Europe and now I'm done?
No, he's gonna
We
try
know
to
he's not going to do that. We know for a fact that's not going to happen. So eventually, one day, this will come to American shores. But still the American people say, I don't want anything to do with this. This is their problem. President Roosevelt, though, can kind of see the writing on the wall. If we don't help now, Hitler only gets stronger. But you have to keep in mind, Roosevelt's a politician. He needs to get reelected. You don't get reelected by saying, this is Europe's problem, so we're going to send troops over there. That's not going to work. He wants to help in different ways. So we create what's called the Lend-Lease Act. Congress puts their toe in the water by saying, we will lend the Brits money to buy American weapons. Oh man, have we heard this before?
No, not this again.
Where did we hear this?
World War I.
Just like World War I. We will loan you American dollars to buy American weapons. We will help you in the fight against the Nazis, but we're not sending troops. This is your issue, not ours. Now, there are going to be a handful of American pilots that volunteer to go over to Great Britain. They're Americans fighting for the Brits under British commanders, but they are few and far between, very limited numbers. This is one small step into getting involved in the war. Now, let me kind of ask you. If you're just part of the American public, average citizen, and your government says, we're going to loan money so they can buy American goods, are you okay with this or no?
Okay, no.
This is kind of the fine line that Roosevelt has to walk. Sort of get involved, but you can't get involved. Did you have a question?
Wasn't the Great Depression still knocking at the time?
Oh, yeah.
So, wouldn't the American people have actually wanted to do it so that they could get it from it?
Get some factories going again?
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be. But the thing is, this is not on a real large scale. It's
No, it's
fairly limited, but I absolutely hear what you're saying, certainly. Now, like I said, Roosevelt's a politician. He needs to be careful. So he has to sell this idea to the American people. Roosevelt is going to go on the radio. He's going to give one of his fireside chats. Remember those? Calmly and confidently, he says to the American people, one of probably his most famous quotes, where he says, well, you would lend your neighbor your garden hose if his house was on fire to simply keep it from spreading to your house. All we're doing is just lending the Brits the garden hose. They're the ones that are going to put out the fire. This is not our war. This is a European issue. We're just helping the Brits right now so that we don't have to fight Hitler in America. Now again, let me kind of pull this back. Is this making some sense?
Yes.
Sure. We don't want to fight the Germans here. The Brits are fighting them over there. It's their problem. We'll just help them out. Has the door been opened for our involvement, though? Ever so slightly, that door to us getting involved is cracked. But it's not going to be what's going on in Europe that gets us involved. We got to go to the other side of the world. We got to talk about what's going on with the Japanese and their ambitions. Now, we were talking about when we first got started with this. The Japanese during this point are very ambitious. They have plans to be a global power. But if they're going to be an industrial power, what do they need?
Resources.
They need resources. And the Japanese home islands simply don't have it. So they have to expand. Now, I want to just remind you, do you remember, where did they go first?
China.
Go to China. They go to Manchuria. They expand. They commit horrific atrocities. And what happens? What's the reaction?
It's not gonna run.
Nothing. The League of Nations does nothing. So the Japanese start to think, we can continue expanding. No one's going to stop us. Now let's kind of maybe think through a little bit.